What does mental health really look like behind the scenes of professional football, and how do elite athletes handle the pressure? Research shows up to 1 in 3 elite athletes experience symptoms of anxiety or depression, proving that the mental side of sport is just as important as the physical. Mental health does not discriminate, and this includes athletes at the very top of their game.
Today, we're joined by Dylan Pierias from Adelaide United Football Club. We're going to discuss the unseen side of football, the mental challenges, the pressure to perform, and how anxiety can affect performance. How can we protect an athlete's well-being while also competing at the highest level?
And just a disclaimer for today's episode, we will be discussing mental health, including things such as panic attacks, anxiety, and depression. So if that's a bit heavy for you at this point in time, you might want to skip past and listen at a later date.
Dills, thank you very much for coming in on your day off. I know you are probably sick of me, particularly being in rehab at the moment. But, mate, can you please give our listeners a quick little overview of your football journey? And again, I just want to thank you so much for coming down and discussing. We've mentioned prior to recording today that a lot of today will be centered around mental health as well. So within that, talk to us about what makes you so passionate about this area.
Yeah, well, firstly, thanks for getting me on the best podcast in Australia. It's I never get sick of seeing you, Shauno, even though it's every day.
You can be honest, I do. That's all right.
It keeps me ticking. Basically, I started playing football at a very young age, around 7.5 to 8 years old. I actually did Auskick first, so I was into AFL, support Collingwood, which not many people like, but and then basically fell in love with the real football, age 7, 8, and just, to be honest, just didn't look back, just played for enjoyment, and then started to realise, I'm actually not bad, and then started to do the state teams and stuff and try for the state teams. It's a bit different now. It was a long time ago. In the under-13 state team and ended up making that for Victoria, which is essentially the best kids in Victoria at that age. There was 900 kids that trialled or something like that if I can remember. But basically just went from that to under-14 state team, and they have this big nationals. And I remember 14's nationals was a big deal because that's when you start kind of getting noticed by the Australian representative team. So in football, for people that don't know, it's 17s, 19s, 20s, 23s, Socceroos. That's how it works. So that's when the Joeys, which is the under-17s, will start looking for that next generation to get called up. So that was a big deal. And basically from there, I got noticed by Melbourne City and Melbourne Victory Scouts. And at the time, now they have all the way down to, I think, almost 14s and up. But at the time, it was only under 20s and youth team. And I remember getting approached by Victory and City, which was pretty special. I ended up choosing Melbourne City for various reasons. I think they have easily one of the best youth academy setups, in my opinion, and I went through that system, and I've got a lot to thank them for turning me into the type of player I am now. Basically just started my journey at Melbourne City, and probably the main turning point in my career was I was 16, playing in the youth team, training. I only trained me once or twice with the first team. And basically it was a random Sunday night, I was getting ready for school, and I got a call and they said, we want you to train A-League for the whole week. And I was like, okay. My dad was parents were wrapped. I'm like, this is unreal. Anyway, I get to training on Monday, nervous as, and you might be playing this week. And for a 16-year-old whose dream was always to play professionally, playing in the youth team, to then getting called up to train and then tell me that I'm going to play maybe, I can't tell you how nervous I was. And I didn't believe it. Even my dad was like, no, don't get your hopes up. Don't worry. Just, it's good that you're there. And then lucky for me, I ended up making my debut at 16 years old in the A-League, and it was pretty special. I was the first millennium-born player in Australia to play A-League. And I just never looked back from there, and basically moved on to Western United after that, then to Western Sydney, and now I'm here.
Fantastic. So I guess throughout that time, different levels and exposures to pressure, I'm
Yep.
sure probably both internally and externally. Can you just give us maybe a little bit of an insight or an overview as to, how it feels to be under some of that pressure? What are some of those pressures that you have to deal with, and maybe some of the coping mechanisms that you had to deal with those?
Yeah, no, obviously playing at an elite level, and being in such an elite environment from a young age, it is quite tough mentally to perform and even to train at that level every day. Like, I think that's one of the things, like game day, everyone's nervous and everyone has that little bit of pressure to perform. But I think for me, one of the main things was kind of the pressure to be professional every day. That's one of the hardest things. And I navigated through my career on how to deal with that as best as possible. And now I'd like to think that I do pretty well at it, being 26 now. But back then I found it really tough. I think one of my things I always had to work on was concentration and all those types of things. And it is difficult, but I did see a sports psych for that stuff to deal with the pressure. And yeah, I think it's super important, especially for young players these days, to even if you don't have any issues or problems, it's like a muscle. We train our legs every day, we train our skills. Like, your mind is the most powerful. So I really believe in that.
I think when you think about being an elite athlete, lots of people think about the skill level that it takes and, the physical training and that side of things. But I think still the mental side is probably something that isn't considered. Before you hit that professional level, was it something that you had struggled with before you were playing professional football? Or do you think that environment sort of highlighted some things for you having to constantly perform?
No, I think I had some pressure before I hit that level. I think from my dad. He was quite hard on me. In a good way, sometimes maybe a little bit too much. But I to be honest, I had that pressure from probably age 13. He just always wanted the best for me. He always had the best intentions. But if I played a bad game, I was in trouble. But yeah, so I kind of had that pressure from my dad, to be honest. So coming in, as much as back then I thought, oh, why is my dad so hard on me? And, sometimes, I would be in tears after a game. But I feel like I wouldn't change it for anything now, because I think he kind of prepped me for coming into that environment and being able to deal with that pressure. And funny enough, like my dad, to this day, I've spoken to him a few times about it, and he said that the reason why he was so hard on me because he thought I could deal with it, and he wasn't so hard on my other brothers, and I always questioned that, but that's why he said, no, I think out of all your brothers, I knew you could take it. So it's just interesting when it comes to parenting, that type of stuff. So.
I think that's an interesting point to draw on, and no doubt, obviously, I'm sure your dad saw things in you that he had justification for that. But I think athletes, when you say being able to cope with it, I think there definitely are maybe personality types, as you're mentioning, that might be able to cope with that pressure. But since you've gone through that journey, and you mentioned you've seen a psych, do you have any? I think it's important to note. My background is in that psych space and yoga and breathwork and well-being. That we don't all inherently have things built into us to be able to cope with that. And I guess you'd never been exposed to pressure at that level when you started playing professionally. Were there some routines or strategies or techniques that the psych taught you that you implement now before you play to cope with the pressure?
There's a few techniques I use now. Definitely, I use the five senses. So, like I named something I can see, I can smell, I can feel. That kind of brings me into the present moment instead of thinking into the future or like those bad thoughts that you have. That's probably one of the main techniques I use. I also use a like a safe method. Like I have like this. I know it sounds a bit crazy, but this imaginary box that I have, and anytime I'm feeling bad thoughts or pressure or anything like that, I put everything into that box. I visualize it. I visualize myself locking that box and walking away and closing the door on it, and that kind of helps me like. It tells your brain like it's not gone, but for now I'm not going to focus on that because it's when you're having these thoughts, it's just impossible to go away in your head. So that's kind of a technique I use to like I'm putting it on pause and I'm going to focus on what I'm doing now. So they're two techniques that I use.
Yeah.
Doesn't sound crazy at all, mate.
Yeah.
And I really appreciate you sharing those. I understand being in the environment that we are and have been in for a long period of time that. When you're surrounded probably by a bunch of other blokes that are thinking, what are you thinking about this imaginary box for, mate? Like that's some soft shit. Like I am a big believer in visualization and manifestation, and I love affirmations and those sorts of things as well. So we appreciate you sharing that, and know that that's not something that I think is strange by any means. I know we've talked about we've probably maybe skipped ahead a little bit. You've talked about the fact you've been to a psych and you've got these strategies. Do you feel comfortable in sharing where was there an instance or a series of instances that led you to maybe going to seek that help? Was it just general anxiety? Did you have any scenarios which you thought, okay, I really need some help here?
Yeah, no, definitely. I think with some of the mental struggles I've been through, it's more just general anxiety and not really like sports related in the sense of like pressure anxiety or performance anxiety. It was more just general anxiety, and I'm happy to go into that. I've worked a lot on myself to be the best person I can, but it kind of all started when I was around 14, 15, and I went on my first Joey's trip to Cambodia. And before that, I never had any struggles or anything mental health wise. I thought my life was great and everything. And I remember landing and getting to the hotel, and I think it was just I just laid in bed I went to bed that first night, and it just hit me this feeling of anxiousness that I've never felt before. And that was probably the first instance it happened to me that I was like, oh, what's this? Why am I feeling like this? Why do I feel unsafe? Why do I feel really anxious right now? Why am I thinking irrationally? Why am I sweaty? Why can't I breathe? Like that all happened to me, and that was the first time that it happened to me, and like I remember it like it was yesterday. Like I can picture the room, everything, and that was the real moment. And unfortunately, I went on for about 1.5 years with not telling anyone. And when I was there, I thought, okay, when I get home, like all this stuff will go away. I'll feel fine. I just want to go home. And I ended up getting home after 3 weeks. It was a long camp, and it just didn't go away. I was still struggling at home with this anxious feeling and irrational thoughts and struggling mentally. And I didn't tell anyone for 1 year. And that was probably like the hardest year of my life. So it was tough. So if I could give any advice, the best thing you can do is tell someone straight away, because there's so many people that are going through stuff like this, and unless you've gone through it, it's the worst thing in the world, being especially alone. So that's kind of when it first kind of happened, and then it's kind of it's dabbled into my life since then. So yeah.
Not to say that, the people, it's got anything to do with the people that are around you during that time in your life, but particularly in male sport, do you think that there was anything about that environment that affected your ability to be able to verbalise it, or was it just purely you weren't sure how to have that conversation?
It's a good question. I think maybe a bit of both. Obviously, it being the first time feeling like this, like when I look back now, I had no idea what was going on.
Do you think you were describing what you said before, those symptoms about having a panic attack? Is that what it was manifesting as?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Yeah, I think also to the environment and being in male sports, like I definitely I was not going to tell anyone there. I actually remember thinking like I can't tell anyone. All the other boys are like so happy and like, why am I like this? They're gonna think I'm a baby. Like I remember thinking like that, and because it was the first camp, like you don't really know anyone because they're from different state. I think there was three other boys from the state team I came from. There's three other boys I knew there, and all the rest. It's the Australian team. They picked the best from around the country. So it wasn't like I was super comfortable with anyone, and like my first time playing for Australia, I just didn't want to mess it up. So, yeah, it was so hard for those 3 weeks because all I wanted to do was go home because I felt this anxiousness and scared and worried, and at the same time like I was in my head all day because it was like, but you're playing for your country. Why aren't you happy? Like it was a disaster. Like it was really tough.
Do you think that those thoughts and that time in your life affected your on-field performance?
100%. I ended up actually still playing actually half decent because I kind of like when I was playing, it kind of gave me my out from those thoughts. But yeah, I definitely did not perform to the best of my ability. And yeah, even to this day, it kind of annoys me, but it is what it is. Yeah.
Well, you obviously are still doing well,
Yeah.
to get where you have despite that. But I can understand, the frustration of sort of, yeah.
And I think the next generation coming through are so fortunate to have role models like yourself to look up to. And in a very similar vein, I was listening to Paul Izzo on a podcast recently, the Socceroos goalkeeper who has almost mirror image experiences like yourself. So I think it will become more of a norm and people will start to understand more in that mental health space as well. I guess zooming out, we have quite a diverse population and a number of generations that we get to work with here at Peak and that come and watch the football as well. Just, certainly not our views by any means, but I've been around enough scenarios to hear maybe some of a generation gone by who might say, well, look at you, Dylan, you're a good-looking rooster, you've got a beautiful daughter, you're a soon-to-be wife, you're playing football for a living, like, what do you need to see a psychologist for? Do you have any messages for people who have that view and to give them a better insight of what's going on inside your head? Because I think that everybody, no matter what situation they are in life, has those battles for sure. But from your perspective,
Yeah, it's interesting. Like I kind of said before, I feel like your brain is a muscle. So the more you work on it, just the better it's going to get. And for people that, that if you look at my life from an outsider's view, you'd be like, yeah, Dill's life's amazing, which it is, right? But, you just don't know what people are going through. It's that simple. Like nobody really knows what's going on in your house or your family. Everyone deals with a lot of things differently. You know, it's a hard one to explain why people would think like that. For me, it's a no-brainer. Like to see a psych or anything because I've done it and I know how good it is. But yeah, I just feel like people need to be more open-minded to wanting to learn or to understand the struggles that like people go through.
I think there's definitely still that stigma. Like, to give you a bit of context, if anyone's watching the video right now, you've got an accessory on your arm with you today. That, when things like that happen physically or, we can dive into a little bit more about you're going through rehab for your knee at the moment, that people are happy to have that conversation, say, oh, what happened? It must be so hard and, devastating for your career and you're out for 12 months. But if you come out and say, actually, I'm struggling mentally, people struggle to open the same sort of dialogue as I don't know, have you had that experience suffering a physical injury and then also having mental health issues as an athlete? Is there a discrepancy between how people will talk about your 100%. Knee versus your mental health?
100%. I've actually never thought about it like that. It's very true. Like people will happily, oh, how's your knee? Whatever. But I feel like even if you do mention, I'm not doing that well mentally, a lot of people will be like, you're okay. Like they freeze. It's actually funny that you say that because like people find it awkward or not as easy to talk about that stuff than your knee. And for me, like with this injury, I feel like the mental side's way harder than like doing this stuff. Like the physical stuff comes so much easier, especially when you have Shauno in the gym.
No.
The assault
We're
bug,
not turning
baby.
this into a Sean Love fest.
But people, it's a lot of people actually haven't asked me like, how are you mentally? Apart from the people that like understand, like Shauno is always checking up on me, which is nice, and a few other people, but 99% of people won't ask about how are you mentally, ask how you need. So very interesting point you brought up.
Do you have any advice then for, and I've witnessed it as well, that you're talking about that sort of freeze and people don't know what to say next, as someone who has struggled with those things? Do you have advice to people if you're talking to friends or teammates or, are you happy for people, your teammates, to ask you that? Do you want that? What would be your advice for people?
Well, personally for me, I wouldn't care at all. Some people, everyone's a bit different, but I think like the best way to go about it is probably asking like, oh, yeah, how's your injury and how are you mentally? Feel free to share whatever you want. Just let you know I'm here for you if you want to talk about that stuff.
Yeah.
I think that's the best way to go about it. It gives them then the opportunity to decide if they want to talk about it or not.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Through this journey, I know you sort of mentioned before that in that early stage, that football was still an outlet for you. Did you ever have a time where you maybe questioned yourself as a footballer and is this the path you want to continue to go down because of this stress you're having, or has it always been, that's my outlet and that's my purpose? You haven't thought about joining Dad fixing up boats? We've had Dill's dad down this week and he's been unbelievable. It tells us how easy we've got it.
Yeah. No, I think football has always been my outlet, but also it's hard to explain because with this mental health stuff that I had, like, it stressed me out so much because I didn't want it to affect my football. So, like, yes, football was my outlet, but it was also giving me more stress. So, yeah, it's a difficult one to say. But, yeah, I guess in the end, football was my outlet. I was never really thought of, like, giving it up or anything like that.
Do you think, or have you thought yourself, do you think it's important for athletes to, and I don't know if this is something you've discussed with your psych in terms of mental health, is it important to have things outside of football for your mental health?
Oh, 100%. I like fishing, Shauno knows, and that's like, I don't know what I'd do without fishing. Like, it's not only just because I love it, it's my mental reset for the week, or if I go once, twice, whatever. It's just my mental reset to be a better person, be a better athlete, better husband, better father. Like, I feel like everyone needs something, like a hobby, I guess, to step away from like everyday life pressure. And that's like, I can't stress enough to how important it is to find something that you enjoy doing that takes your mind off everything.
Have you figured out how to fish one hand right now?
No, to be fair, I was in the garage before and I was putting the rod here. And I can hold it, but
I'll go cast it out for you if you need me.
Yeah, no.
I might just touch back on something you mentioned at the beginning when you were talking about your sort of routines and things you use now to cope with that pressure. And you briefly mentioned about bringing you into the present moment and linking back to what you just said about having purpose outside of football. And, I heard you say as well when you play that it almost gave you that opportunity for mindfulness. And I've definitely experienced that in sport. And I think it's really key to mention that people think that meditation or mindfulness has to be where you sit in a dark room and close your eyes and breathe for 30 minutes, which is just, not everybody's thing. That I think sport can provide that opportunity for mindfulness, and you mentioned about, fishing, and that might be your opportunity for mindfulness. Has your psych actually talked you through, because that exercise that you were talking about with the five senses does have background in mindfulness, and performance anxiety is all around projecting into the future or projecting in the past. So the more that you can bring yourself into the present moment, and that's what that five sense is about. So when you have seen your psych, do they explain to you sort of the concepts behind those tools that you use?
Yeah, no, they do. They definitely do. And there's a lot of different tools, and you just got to find what works for you, in my opinion. And those ones work for me.
Mm-hmm.
Don't take any advice. I'm not a sports psych, but they're just they do explain the concept behind them.
Yeah, well, it's about developing, I think, a toolbox, right, of things, and there are so many different coping strategies and methods out there, but it's like you said, it's important to note that not everything's going to work. What works for you isn't going to work for Sean and isn't going to work for me. So were there things that you tried that didn't work, or did it take you a while to figure out what was going to help you in terms of your football performance?
There's a few things that you try that don't work, but I think it's also important that you got to give the tools a good go as well. Like it doesn't just work instantly. Like you actually got to practice at those things, especially the visualization ones that I do. You've got to actually practice those things, and you'll find just like anything, the more you do it, the better you get at it, the more easier it is, and it actually does work.
What does your reset routine look like after a game? So obviously in most circumstances we play late in the evening. You maybe had a bit of caffeine as well. I imagine probably mine is ticking over. Do you have a little bit of a sort of wind down routine as we sort of settle back down to try to get some sleep, which we know is so important for recovery as well?
Yeah. Not really. I'm actually a pretty easygoing guy. Like I'm not really superstitious or I have set routines. I kind of just go with the flow, to be honest. So normally after a game, probably just hang out with my daughter. I feel like that kind of brings me back down to earth and to what's important. Like after a game, you are so hyped up and you're at Cooper's with 10 to 15,000 people. And in a non-cocky way, how do I say? You feel like the man. You know what I mean? Yeah, does that sound cocky?
No.
Not at all.
You know what I mean?
Make sure you tell Blake Ashby. We caught on the weekend.
He thinks he's the man.
Taking selfies with fans, which is
No, but I think that all leads into what you're saying about sport and, feeling like you couldn't speak up and say anything because you're in this environment that does build you up to be like, hey, we're all elite athletes here and we're at the top of our game and we should be able to cope with it. And that feeling is definitely valid and sport does provide you with that level of confidence. But I guess it's on the flip side when you're not feeling confident and when you are battling, those two messages could be conflicting.
100%.
Dilza, we could chat all day, my man, but we are going to wrap it up just with a few quick-fire questions. So, first one, what's one thing that you wish you knew earlier about mental health?
Definitely to speak up. Just to tell someone what you're going through. 100%. I wish I never went through that year and a half of not telling anyone. So,
for sure.
100%.
What advice would you give to younger athletes who are putting lots of pressure on themselves?
I would probably say that it's just a game at the end of the day. You're more than just Dylan Pierias, the footballer. You know what I mean? You got to kind of just realise you're just Dylan at the end of the day. So when I think like that, I don't feel pressure. I feel like, it's just a game. I'm just a normal person and this is my job. And so.
I do love it put that way. I did hear a quote the other day that football is the most important, non-important thing in the whole world.
Yes.
And sometimes you forget about that when you're so worried. Last one, how should athletes approach mental health without feeling like it's a weakness?
Just go in with an open mind, really. And just do your research. It's definitely not a weakness. there's so many people that deal with stuff every day. And since like it's happened to me and I've been in the space, there's so many people that I was shocked that was dealing with mental health problems. So you're just not alone, and it's definitely something that you shouldn't look at as being weak.
And I think that's why this conversation is so important because, yeah, as you said, even within your own club or within your career, there's people who still maybe don't know how to broach that conversation, even at the top level where you are exposed to good resources and education and stuff like that. So I have no doubt that there's young athletes or athletes out there now that think that they're the only ones going through it. So thank you for sharing your story. That makes it really, really important and pertinent at the moment, even what's going on in the AFL. So, thank you for sharing your story and chatting to us.
No, thanks for having me.
Thanks, Dils. What a wonderful chat with Dylan. Look, there's so many golden nuggets I've taken out of that. But for me, the top three, number one is it is not weak to be going through something within your own head, no matter what circumstances you have in your life. Number two is really try to urge people to talk to anybody that you feel comfortable confiding in. That will start the process for your recovery. And number three, I think you can also look at mental health like we do physical health. Let's prehab as opposed to rehab.
If this episode resonated with you, we'd love you to share it with a teammate, coach, or athlete in your circle who might need to hear Dylan's story. We've placed some links in the episode description if this conversation has highlighted any issues or concerns for yourself or those around you. Mental health is just as important as physical performance, and these conversations matter. Don't forget to follow the Peak Performance podcast for more insights from elite athletes and leading practitioners helping everyday athletes perform at their best.